It was working earlier, right?
Well, the preview is working. Okay. Okay, we're live.
Okay.
Awesome.
We're live on
Finally.
LinkedIn and we're live on Riverside as well.
Yep. I only see 3
Awesome.
people in Riverside right now, but we put that link out, so
Now I see us live. So
you see us live. Okay, perfect.
I will go ahead and kick this off. I know everyone's probably joining and then it will take a little bit for everyone to join, but I know we had 130 attendees RSVP. So we'll probably have a good group of folks joining us today. I want to start off, where are most of you coming from? And the other question is, what are you most interested in hearing from David about today? So drop your comments. You can drop it either in Riverside. I did include the link on LinkedIn Live, or you can go ahead and put your comment in LinkedIn as well. So I'll give it a minute here. And everyone's coming in. Unfortunately, we don't have a joke, David, to share. We usually have a little joke.
I got stories.
Oh, we'll get into those for sure.
We'll get into those. Those won't be a quick 30-second joke. So I wish I had a little open liner here. And just a heads up, so since we are on LinkedIn Live, I know that it tends to be a little bit laggy. It's about 15-second lag between Riverside to LinkedIn. So for those of you, if you notice that I am not answering your question, I am going to be monitoring the chat. But if you just notice that I'm really slow, that's the reason why. So just want to make sure that you're aware of that. All right. Well, we're coming here from Heber near Park City, Utah. And we want to welcome David Bradford. And today's theme is how to survive and thrive the roller coaster cycles of tech and innovation. So this is in partnership with Utah Tech Week. I know there's about 140 or 150 events happening in Utah this week, all centered around supporting the startup community, tech, and entrepreneurs. So David, we're basically kicking off Utah Tech Week, which is awesome. And we're really
fun.
We're really excited to have you on here. So so I'll give a quick little intro and then I'll have Eric give an intro on you, David. So my name is Michelle Kuo. I'm co-founder of Executive Alliance, and here's my co-founder, Eric Solano. We run Executive Alliance and this Leadership Lab podcast. So for those who don't know what Executive Alliance is, we're creating a community to support underrepresented groups to get and feel supported and less alone. So those are entrepreneurs, director, VP, CXOs, and women to basically feel like there's a place where they can go to process issues, challenges, and feel supported in a community. So that's what Executive Alliance is. We're building out a couple of cohorts already. We built out a CEO, CXO, CFO, and a women's group. So we're going to continue to expand, and we're excited about the community we're building. We have interviewed thousands of candidates over our lifetime, so probably 5,000 plus. And now we're applying this to leaders and executives. So we want to be able to learn from you today, David, on entrepreneurship, leadership, how to build culture, and just your vision and how you rode through the technical roller coasters. So we'll get into that. And as a reminder, we are streaming live on LinkedIn Live, but this is going to be recorded for podcasts and we'll publish it on Spotify. And a little agenda. So we're going to be talking about adaptability and learning, personal resilience, your vision, and how you built your culture, as well as kind of legacy and just what you're doing moving forward. So we'll start off with topics in the first 45 minutes. Eric and I will curate that. And if anybody has any specific questions, I will be checking LinkedIn as well as Riverside for questions while that's happening. But at the end, we're going to open it up to Q&A for the last 15, 20 minutes. So just so you know. And as part of Utah Tech Week, we do have 2 other events. So announcement wise, we have a recruiter revealed on this Thursday, the 25th at 2 p.m. MST. And then we have a ski with Executive Alliance here at Deer Valley. So for those who are here or want to fly in, we also have a luncheon. So we're doing it all day Friday. All right. Well, Eric, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah. Welcome, David. Thanks, Michelle, for that intro. So just to give a bit of background on David, we met David, God, ages ago. And I remember, David, joining you at your home for your book sort of release. And I remember reading your book, and it was amazing just how some of these timeless principles about connecting with people and networking, and it was amazing to see how you sort of applied that to sort of the technology at the time, which primarily was LinkedIn, but the principles were classic and timeless. And I think Michelle and I, we really strived and aspired to kind of sort of up level up our game through the years. So we thank you for that inspirational book. But just to give a little bit of background on David here, David's been a prominent business leader for over 35 years in tech and computers, in the computer industry here in Utah. And he's the CEO of FluentWorlds, and where he's revolutionizing language training in 3D virtual worlds. He's led 2 companies, HireVue and Fusion-io, to the Forbes list of America's 50 fastest growing tech companies. As an executive for 15 years at Novell, he's guided the company from a $40 million in revenue to more than $2 billion in revenue. As far as awards, he's received the Lifetime Achievement Award by Utah Business Magazine 2017, and he's been inducted into the Utah Technology Hall of Fame in 2013. He wrote the book Up Your Game, which is what we just talked about. An amazing book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend you check it out. Up Your Game by David Bradford. And a few notable achievements. David was able to recruit Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, to Fusion-io. And he's also recently signed BYU basketball legend Jimmer Fredette, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, to represent FluentWorlds in China.
That was a little bit ago.
Was it a while ago?
On Jimmer, right. We stay in touch a lot, but yeah.
Right on. Well, just a brief intro on David, and without further ado, welcome, David. We're excited to talk with you about our theme today, which is how to survive and thrive the roller coaster cycles of tech and innovation. We're looking forward to learning a lot from you in the next 45 minutes or so.
Well, thanks, Eric and Michelle. It's a pleasure. And thanks for coming to the book launch in May. That will be 10 years ago. So the book sold out of Amazon at least once. I'm not sure what it's doing now, but it was a lot of fun writing and reflecting and learning as we write. I'm writing a new book to My Life in 20 Seconds, My Life in 20 Minutes. And it's going to tell a little bit more of the story. But
when is that coming out, David?
Oh, gosh. I'd like it to come out in May, about the same time, a decade later, from my other book. Don't know if I'll pull it off, but we're pretty busy. You mentioned I was CEO of FluentWorlds, the combination of FluentWorlds, language training in 3D worlds, but now we've opened it up to learning virtually any subject, driven by artificial intelligence with artificial tutors in 3D virtual worlds. It's pretty awesome when you can go back and meet with Einstein or Aristotle or Confucius or Gandhi, et cetera, and have a live interchange with them and ask them questions and get responses. And that technology is called Quick Learn, and that launches in about 10 to 15 days.
Oh, exciting. All right, you'll have to update us, and then we'll have to sort of promote it on your behalf.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. And I was going to say, David, we've known you over 10 years then. And for some reason our paths have crossed, so it's been amazing to see this.
Great.
And just to set the stage here a little bit, David, I think what prompted sort of this theme here is what we've been seeing in the marketplace as of late, as of the past 12 months or so. It's been one of those, we've come to sort of see these cycles in technology. And, we have these cycles where there's emerging platforms of technologies, and these companies sort of emerge, and it's sort of high times. And then at some point, it's sort of like the platform gets sort of exhausted. and sort of the low-hanging fruit in terms of business models or business ideas or products or services that could be built on the platform sort of becomes depleted, and then you sort of go down, and then maybe another platform emerges, and then a whole series of companies emerge as a result of that. And we've seen some cycles in our lifetime, but really really interested in digging into kind of your experience. I mean, because you've seen even the advent of the PC mainframes to
Oh yeah.
PCs to the internet to now AI, and it's just, I mean, so your
As you're
experience,
talking about
yeah,
it, it kind of reminds me back in the days of the mainframes in the 70s with Cray and IBM and Honeywell. And there was this pause on technology because those machines cost $5-10 million, and only large corporate enterprises could afford them. And then, there was a pause in innovation, et cetera. And along came something called the super mini computer. And people hear that term mini computer and they go, oh, is that like a laptop or whatever? No, it was a pretty high end fast machine that would cost anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000, but it
Wow.
was 10x lower in terms of the cost of a mainframe. And with that innovation, with companies like Prime Computer and Digital Equipment Corporation and Data General, along came a new wave of innovation.
yeah,
And that was in the late 70s. And then in the early to mid 80s, along came the IBM PC.
yeah. And I mean, you've obviously seen those cycles, and part of the conversation here today is to kind of understand what you've seen as a result of those cycles, not and how to not just survive those cycles, but also to thrive in them. Right. Because I think right now, I mean, in one case, we're seeing there's an abundance of tech talent out there, and they're struggling to find the next, opportunity or next job. There's an abundance of founders out there that are struggling with either funding or to find product market fit. And there's sort of some of these entrepreneurs and founders are like, transitioning. They're like, oh, maybe I just need to go find a job. Right. And so how
I
do you weather that?
think the first thing that these entrepreneurs need to think about in terms of their products and technology is pain points. Some years ago, I entered a senior track meet, and I was a long jumper in high school, and so forth. And I thought, hey, I turned 50, I'll dominate the world of the long jump for people in the senior ranks. And this is about 20 years ago. And I was at a track meet at BYU, and I can remember running down for my first jump um, in the long jump, and I hit the board, and I thought, I'm going to go 20 feet, and I start, and suddenly my right hamstring, popped, like it
Ooh.
was just, and I've never felt pain like that before in my life. And I'm flying through the air, and I'm thinking I would give $1 million to have this pain go away. So as you think about your business, think about what is the pain point you're solving. I would have paid $1 million to have my hamstring repaired then and there. At least that was in my mind. But the point is, people will write checks when their pain point is being solved. So, is your product, is your technology really solving a current problem that people are incurring? If they are, if they're feeling pain, they'll write you a check.
Yeah, and sort of the pain evolves over time, right? And what people are suffering from, or where there's opportunity, that's where they are. That's where there's opportunity to find that product market fit, right?
And it takes time sometimes. It
Yeah,
takes 10 years, it there's a bit element of persistence to all of this. And if you've got the means and the guts to kind of hang with it, suddenly the market will turn one day in your favor and so forth. So,
David, I had a question. I'm curious to see, like, how did you figure out the pain point when you started out with Fusion.io and HireVue? Like, how did you come up with that idea? And then just what did you see in the market?
well, I wish let's refer to Fusion.io because I just got a text from David Flynn, who was the founder and CEO when I came into Fusion.io. And David saw a pain point in the marketplace. Hard disk drive storage were slow. They were mechanical devices. Whenever you have mechanical devices, they're going to break, et cetera, et cetera. And so the pain point in the market was finding some kind of memory device that would endure in the corporate data center. You had companies like Facebook and, what was the original social network?
Friendster.
And you had, LinkedIn, you had Apple, you had these big corporations that had massive data centers, and they were filled with these hard disk drives, but they would fail regularly. And so it was a challenge that David Flynn took upon himself to solve that pain point. And so he invented some software along with some hardware devices to accelerate data flows in corporate data centers, utilizing what became, Western Digital, and before that it was a series of companies. But the point is, solve that pain point. It wasn't me. I'm not the pain point solver necessarily, but I can find them. And so I've been blessed to have great people along my life that found a pain point and then apply some leadership, apply some team members to the problem, and boom, you've got an opportunity.
One of the challenges, David, that we've seen is, with these sort of ups and downs and these evolutions of these sort of tech-driven cycles, I think what we're trying to understand is like how you weather this, and what are some of the timeless or classic principles. One of them that we see in you is just your adaptability and your curiosity, because as the landscape sort of moves below your feet, how do you sort of adjust to that? And, what are some of the things that folks should be thinking about? Because what worked yesterday to get you where you are today may not work to get you where you want to be tomorrow, right?
Right.
And so what are some of the things that you've done in your career and your experience, or some of the things that you would espouse for folks to kind of weather and thrive?
One of the things that occurs to me, and it's one of the 6 principles in my book,
Yeah.
is it's just showing up. 90% of success in life, Woody Allen once said, is just showing up. And I've seen that principle apply in my life. And it's not just showing up, but then when you show up, you be curious, you ask questions, you get involved. I know I was recently at an AI conference sponsored by the state of Utah up in Salt Lake City. Great conference, but lots of question and answers. And afterwards, I'd heard a question asked by a guy named Andrew Carr, and he really brilliant question. And so I walked over to him and shook his hand, and we got acquainted. And Andrew runs a company here called Cartwheel now. And it's going to be a leader in its space, in the AI space. But since Quick Learn, our product, is driven by artificial intelligence, I had some questions to Andrew. But you just can't, you look at somebody and go, oh my gosh, they're so smart. I would never be able to, have a conversation. I don't care. I'm just curious. I was curious about Andrew's background. Turns out he worked at OpenAI as a senior research scientist. So we've got an Andrew Carr, one of the most brilliant AI guys, machine learning guys in the state of Utah. I recommend you interview him sometime. But the point is on Andrew is I showed up at the conference. I took the time to introduce myself to Andrew, and we got acquainted, and now we've got a business relationship ongoing. But it started by showing up. And then picking the minds of those people. So when you ask the question, well, how do you thrive and get past these issues? Well, listen, you got to surround yourself with the smartest people in the world. Those people can figure it out. I'm not the smartest people in the world, but I can surround myself with really brilliant people. Steve Wozniak, Eric Schmidt, et cetera, have been colleagues of mine and over the decades. So your IQ or your intelligence will be elevated by those with whom you associate. What does it say? That you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. So if you surround yourself with 5 absolutely brilliant people, you go up.
No, I love that. I mean, right now there's a lot of folks that are networking on LinkedIn, right? But they're not taking it to the next level. They're not showing up to the next level, which is, and you talk about this in your book, follow through, right?
Yeah, follow
Following
up.
up,
Yeah.
following up, right?
Start
And
up, follow up, show up. Yeah.
yeah, and sort of taking the relationship to a deeper and next level. So I love that. Um, what are your thoughts on just how do you stay adaptable to learning as the pace at which technology is moving is so fast? And I guess what are your thoughts on how to just keep up with it and how to focus on
What I've noticed over time is an idea will come along. I can remember sitting in my office at Novell circa 1994, and a young man by the name of Joe Firmage came in, and he'd been at Novell. We'd bought his company, and so I developed a relationship with Joe, and he came in my office, and he says, David, I just want to let you know I'm leaving Novell. I'm moving to the Silicon Valley, and I'm going to start an internet company over there. Well, what's the internet, right? Now that was 94. And here's the point I'm going to make. You have these emerging technologies, they're not going to be pervasive overnight. It took another 5 years before the internet really became pervasive, usable, et cetera, et cetera. And it's guys like Joe Firmage who helped build platforms that allowed you to interface with the internet. And so, but watch for those trends. And today, the big thing is AI. Get on the AI bandwagon. I will say this. And I just want to say this about AI. I run into people all the time, more my age group, that are like scared to death of AI. Oh, it's going to take over the world. The next world war is going to start. Someone's, whatever. Listen, find a way to use AI for something good, for something positive. We have an opportunity as people in this day and age now to formulate what AI is going to look like as we move down the road. We're doing it with Quick Learn, utilizing artificial intelligence to imbue into these artificial or automated instructors these great knowledge base. And so I'm just saying that's my plea to people. Don't be afraid of it. Dive in. Don't be afraid to utilize it. I hope you're all using ChatGPT-4 now, because it allows you to create images, epic images, just boom, that fast. And a lot of people just take a little while to get it, anyway.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's at once exciting, but it's also scary. I think
Yeah,
you touched on it because, with any emergence of a new technology, it has the potential to do bad, but it has a lot of potential to do good.
and we've seen the internet do stuff
Yeah.
that's bad, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But overall, is our world better because of the net? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I love just the optimistic, hopeful energy that you bring to this, David, because for the first time in my life, just a week ago, I suppose, a friend of mine posted about Midjourney. And as a former photographer, I felt, for the first time in my life, I felt like a Luddite, right? And I'm,
Yeah,
and I hope I'm not on sort of going down the wrong path here, but it's with the emergence of this technology and the pace at which it's emerging, people are struggling to figure out, and then there's just sort of this general fear that these technologies will be taking people's jobs and their livelihood. And I think that's part of the conversation today is how can we adapt to the technology and really leverage that in a positive way, if nothing else, just for us to put our career on a different trajectory.
absolutely. Listen, it's going to open up millions of jobs that we can't even envision now. I think of my company. Hey, now we need content creators to take AI and apply it to these artificial automated tutors. We need people to, supply support, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like any other technology back in the day of the internet. We were all scared. Oh my gosh, it's going to displace jobs and whatnot. But there'll always be job creation And for the people that are doers, there'll be job opportunities.
Yeah. And I think maybe key to that is being resilient and open into learning new things and being adaptable. How have you sort of cultivated that in your own career, David? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but I was hoping you can expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah. Are you asking about adaptability?
Yeah, adaptability, curiosity. How do you just cultivate that and maintain that over your life, right? Like,
Well, listen, some people are naturally curious, but I will tell you that is something that was born in me, but it can be developed. Absolutely. When you go, you do your next conference and you show up and Eric and Michelle are there, don't be afraid to walk over to Eric and Michelle and say, "Hey, I heard your podcast with Andrew Carr or whomever it might be," and ask them about that. Be curious. If you're curious about their lives, what's going on with them, the law of reciprocity will set in and they will become genuinely curious about you. What's your business doing? How is it going, etc. And then the interchange happens. So if you need to, take a little piece of paper before you go to the event. That's old school, or put it on your notes on your smartphone and just, here are 5 questions that I want answered at this conference. And don't be afraid to ask and find the people that will be knowledgeable.
David, this is, it's funny because this piece of advice, most people talk about be curious, go to networking events, talk to people and network. But very few people follow through. And I think all of these principles are really important. And we see that in you. Like, we've been really impressed over the decade that we've known you. You've followed through. You've been curious. You've attended all of our, a lot of our events. We had the Founders Fiesta and some other ones. And, we appreciate that. That level of effort is something that doesn't happen very often. And so when it doesn't happen, when it happens, we know those are the people we want to surround ourselves. And so when you talk about surrounding yourself with the average 5 people, that's something that's important for us. And that's part of why we built community. Our community at Executive Alliance is really built around that, making sure people are committed.
And the opportunity for you to go and, let's say you're in the CFO, group in the Executive Alliance or whatever. That CFO that you meet there, he's going to have faced a problem that you've been worried about for 6 months. How do I, put this on my, my financials? What does that look like, and so forth. So it's just by showing up and being curious, you form these relationships, and good things can come out of them. Also, one of the things that I've pointed out frequently in my life is and it's something I learned many, many years ago from my mother, if you will, is you think first of others. Think of that little primary class or little Sunday school class you attended, for me, many, many decades ago. But you're always taught to think first of others and, to think how you can help them. And so I always advise people when they go to the conference, have your notes written down about what you want to solve. But the way you get it solved is to offer yourself up and your domain expertise to help them. You listen around for people. What are their issues? What are their problems? What is it that they're dealing with that you might have an answer to? I remember Mitt Romney once said something like, everybody I've ever met knows something or someone I don't know. Think about that. Everyone you will ever meet knows someone or something you don't know. And so it's your challenge to try to divine what that is, try to figure out what that is.
And I think,
go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, no, I was going to say that I think that we go into that mentality when we talk to people, even if they're junior or they don't look like they're not in our industry, but we go into that with that mentality. And I think we're able to extract or at least learn something from each person that we talk to. But go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, no, everybody has something to offer, and if nothing else, just a different perspective, right? And I think there's a lot to unpack in that little yellow piece of paper that you have there, David, because it sort of symbolizes going into something with intention, right? If you're just going to a
Mm.
networking event, that little piece of paper, right? I have a yellow piece of paper here. Uh, it symbolizes going into something with intention, right? Whether it's a question that you have or an area you want to learn about or a person you want to meet. If you start living your life and conducting yourself, even something as simple as going to an event and saying, okay, this is what I'd like to get out of it. You put your mindset into one where you're living with intention,
Right,
and
right.
it's very powerful. That's a very
Well,
powerful
I
thing.
know kind of the word of the year is you manifest something, right? We used to talk about envisioning something. I mean, this is a concept that goes back to Dare to Be Great, a book that was written, I think, in the 30s or 40s. And you kind of envision it yourself. Oh, you create your vision board. That was a big thing back in the 80s and 90s. Create your vision board, put your Ferrari up there, et cetera, et cetera. So this idea of manifesting is not a new one, but it's a tried and true method of thinking what the result is, thinking what you want first, and then constructing a foundation to get where you want to.
Yeah, because right now, it's when things are tougher, whether from an economic standpoint or an employment standpoint, sometimes people lose sight of that things will get better and how do they become better and what do you need to do during these low times. How would you compare and contrast, David? The things that you do during a down economic or tech cycle versus how you conduct yourself when things are great and everything's just moving along swimmingly. Like, how do you compare and contrast how you operate between this and this?
I think of three periods of my life as it relates to technology along those lines. Um, and I think about the internet and how that came about and how that then began to impact people. But then what happened in the year 2000? Everybody freaked out about Y2K, and the world was going to blow up and end because we didn't have quite the right URL or appellations associated with Y2K. And so the world was coming into an end. And by the way, software sales dropped dramatically. I can remember we were doing like 450 million a year at Novell, or not a year, a quarter, 450 million a quarter at Novell. And, we came into an executive staff meeting. I remember our senior vice president of sales came in and he had this, deer in the headlights look. And he says, oh my gosh, we're not even going to do 400 million this year. I mean, I may not have the numbers exactly right, but or this month or this quarter, and but it's close. And the point I'm making is you just have to bear down, right? You see it in life, in sports, in so many ways. Last night the Kansas City Chiefs, man, it looked like the Buffalo Bills were going to run up and down the field all night long on them, but in the end they bore down, they got serious, they adjusted their defense. Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator, started calling more blitzes, et cetera, et cetera. You just have to adapt. You just have to get creative and kind of gut through some of those times. So we gutted through the blow up of the internet in the early 2000s. And then it was the real estate market in 2007 and 2008, and the mortgage, fiascos, et cetera. I don't know. So there's something in my brain that says, "Hey, there's going to be another cycle. You just bear down, and it'll happen for you."
Yeah, just kind of try to weather it and
Yeah,
know that things will turn around. And how much of it is sort of positioning yourself in anticipation that things will turn around? Um, it's sort of, yeah. I guess. Well, what are your thoughts there? Like when things are down, like right now, what should people be doing? It sounds like we talked a little bit
well,
about.
they, listen. I love sports, and we were watching this kid yesterday, Nick Dunlop, 20-year-old kid from the University of Alabama, pure amateur in golf. He walks out and competes with the greatest golfers in the world, Utah's Tony Finau, Jason Thomas, all of these great players. And what does he do? He shoots 29 under for 4 rounds and wins a major golf tournament. Now, and what he said is pressure is a privilege. And so maybe it's those times where you're feeling that extraordinary pressure. The stock market's failing, the mortgage industry's failing, the internet's failing, the metaverse blew up. There's hundreds of these things, but you think to yourself, pressure is a privilege. And I have the opportunity now to feel that pressure and to try to find a way to find a workaround, to find a better way, to be ready for that next trend that I know is going to come along as they come along.
Yeah, if you can harness that pressure, right, and not
Yeah,
look at it as something that is end of the world or it's, something that's debilitating, but if you can harness that pressure, it could put you in a place where you can be much more creative, innovative. It can spark that hustle and drive.
yeah, yeah. And Dunlop said another thing. He's standing over the 6-foot putt to win the tournament. If he misses the putt, he goes into a playoff against a very experienced player, and more likely than not would lose that playoff. If he had that 6-footer, he in his mind he goes back to those hundreds of times, those thousands of times on the putting green that he practiced that putt. It was just a straight uphill, back and forth, knock it in. And go back to those times that were good. Go back to those times when you accomplished something, and utilize that as motivation to succeed in that kind of pressure-filled environment. There were 10 million people watching this kid on TV and another 250,000 at the tournament watching him to see whether he's going to make this putt and be the first amateur in 35 years to win a major golf tournament. And boom, right in the center of the cup.
Yeah.
So,
No, I love that reference you're just making about going back to the times in your past, in your experience personally and professionally where you've had success, right? Because that reminds you of the possibilities. It reminds you that you are capable, right? And actually, that's one of the exercises that I encourage the job seekers that I'm working with is, reflect back on your work experience, your personal experience, and find those stories of success that you've had and use that as sort of a foundation to build upon, because
absolutely.
we'll all, you'll get there. It's a tremendous thing to sort of relive that feeling of success that you've had in the past, because you can replicate that going forward.
Eric, you said something earlier, Michelle did, about living life with intention. And I think that's really significant for job seekers and for people that are looking to maybe upskill in their business. You've got to be intentional about it. And so every morning I get up and here's my little sheet of paper. I write down my list of things to do that day. Now you can see I've got quite a few crossed off because I get up early and I make my list and then I cross it off during the day. But to your point, I've never thought of it in these terms, but I'm living life with intention. You make the list, and then you go off and execute on it.
Yeah.
And so forth. I do have one thing that I'll say in that connection. One of my favorite quotes I heard, and I can't even remember the author of it originally. Maybe one of your guests listening in can figure it out. But I once heard that the world needs dreamers and the world needs doers. But most of all, the world needs dreamers that do. So that combination of people, I think of Steve Wozniak, building that original Apple computer. Guys, he sat 50 feet from where I'm sitting now in our home and told us the whole story of how he was reading those Philips manuals or those RCA manuals of those early TVs and trying to figure out, well, geez, if they can broadcast something on a television, why can't I get, input some code and have it appear on a screen? And so he's pulling apart these televisions and so forth and trying to figure it out. Now, Steve didn't just dream one day that he could see a television or a monitor or a flat screen, if you will. He went out and did something about it. I can see him in his living room pulling out all these wires from those original RCA black and white TVs, trying to figure out all of that stuff. So he did something about it. He dreamt it, but he did something about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much power in a dream, in a vision, and sometimes we lose sight of, what is our vision, and is it just to make ends meet? For some folks, that's a stepping stone, and for some folks, that we have to do that. But having a larger vision that we can aspire to for ourselves, for our family, for our community, for our country, for our company, is something that can be very compelling. And finding that balance between dreaming and executing, right? Because you can dream all day, but if you're not executing, you're not making any movement towards that, it's just a dream, right?
Nolan Bushnell once wrote a book called Finding the Next Steve Jobs. And Nolan, little known story, he's the inventor of the Atari. And he's also the inventor of Chuck E. Cheese. And guess where Nolan Bushnell grew up? Clearfield, Utah. Just, up there by Farmington, just north of Salt Lake. And he worked at Lagoon in the summers. And while he did that, he saw this game, the physical game. And then he thought, he was taking courses at the University of Utah, and he thought, well, maybe there's an electrical or a digital way that I could replicate that game. And he did it. And hence the Atari was introduced to the world back, I don't know, late 70s or something like that.
I had one of those.
And that sort of thing. But again, someone that in that book, Finding the Next Steve Jobs, he says, everybody who's ever taken a shower has had a great idea. It's the person that gets out of the shower, towels off, and goes and does something about it that changes the world.
I love it.
And David, I mean, I love kind of that concept of, being a dreamer and a doer. It's a combination. Would you say that entrepreneurs all have that? They have the vision, but they also they execute on that vision.
Well, Ryan Smith is a great example of someone who did, right? He had a dream, but he went out and executed on it at Qualtrics and resulted in an $8 billion cash deal when they sold the company. And I remember his mother telling us one time that she dropped Ryan and his brothers off in downtown Provo back in, I don't know, when he was a young boy, maybe 10, 12, 14. And the mom's advice to her boys, Nancy is her name. Nancy said to her boys, listen, it's summer, go get a job. Don't come home until you have a job. Right? And so
that's the pressure right there.
That's the pressure. And I think Ryan went to work at a bicycle shop. I don't know where his brothers went to work, cleaning, sweeping, whatever. But they came home with jobs, and it taught them independence early in their lives. And you see every one of those boys, Jared, Kimball, Ryan, the Smith brothers, that have all succeeded. And so my goal in life now is to imbue into my 17 grandkids that same independence, that same desire to, create something that can change the world and not just sit back and let the status quo impact you. You be the one who changes the scenario, the narrative.
Well, actually, this is a nice segue, Dave, because when you think about, how do you imbue that on your, what you just mentioned, your grandchildren, but, as a leader, how do you imbue that on your team? That sort of creating that pressure for yourself to be creative, to be innovative, to be resilient. How do you foster a culture like that among your team? Let's say if you're a founder, or even if you're just, you're leading a small team, or even just for yourself, if you're an individual contributor, like how do you cultivate that within yourself?
Well, first, let me make a statement that I believe that 60% of the success of any company is based on its people. It's not based on its technology. It's not based on timing to market. Those all have an impact. but people are the thing that makes all the difference. And so by surrounding yourself and hiring those people that can make a difference, I think of Jim Dawson back when I was the fresh CEO of Fusion-io. And I said, I got to find the greatest salesperson in this market in the world. And I went out and I found this Jim Dawson guy. And there's a long story to that, but I remember Jim's on our first or last interview saying something like this: David, if you can promise me a cabin on the Madison River, I will come be your chief revenue officer. And I says, done. You will have that cabin on the Madison River. Jim has today a cabin on the Madison River, but he came in and he did something about it, and so what I'm saying is, how do you imbue that into your people? I think it's example. And so I don't even, I just work. I just go after it. I try to get things done, et cetera, et cetera. And the people that are part of my team, they see that, hey, here's someone who's actually doing something. Maybe I need to follow suit. Maybe I need to emulate that. Preaching to people all day long does little good. It's if you can show them, as you're showing your candidates, your job candidates, and the people at Executive Alliance, you're doing something about it. You're trying to make a difference, but you got to get out of that shower, go off and execute.
Yeah, I love that. I think both Michelle and I, we kind of err on the side of doing, and trying to show through our actions. And we're very light on the promotional side.
Right.
That's a muscle that we're still learning how to.
And yet you had
develop.
140 people sign up for this.
Yeah.
So you did okay.
Yeah, we're working on it. We're making some strides.
Well,
so
we should probably wrap up a little bit, and then I wanted to give a chance for the audience to go ahead and ask questions. So maybe, David, any parting words for executives and entrepreneurs? Anything that we didn't talk about, but just word advice or words?
Boy, continue to show up anywhere, everywhere. I showed up in Sun Valley in 2008, Idaho, asked to speak at a conference. It was a 6-hour drive from Provo. I didn't really want to do it, but in the end, I kind of owed a favor to this guy. I drove to Sun Valley, give my speech. Well, who was there but Steve Wozniak? And, there's little decisions in your life. It's the smallest things that make a difference. And I can remember I had set a tea time, because people who know me know I love golf. I'd set a tea time that day at 11 a.m. at the Sun Valley Country Club. I was super excited. I gave my speech at 9 a.m. I was done by 10, walking out now. And I run into this young man who had some questions about my speech. And I was listening to him. And as I was doing it, I looked down, I saw a little piece of paper, white sheet of paper on a piano bench that said, keynote speaker, Steve Wozniak, inventor of the Apple computer. And I go, geez, I've met a lot of the greats, but I've never met Woz. And so now I've got a choice. You get a choice every day in life. And that choice that day was, do I go play golf at 11 a.m., which is kind of what I wanted to do, or do I cancel my tea time and go to that noon speech by Woz? That day, I happened to make a great decision. And I walked into that event. Here's another tip. When you're going to go to an event, go and sit in the front row. Don't sit back and just take it casually. Go sit in the front row, get involved. And I happened to sit next to, of all people, Woz's executive assistant. She introduced herself. I introduced myself. And she said, oh my gosh, would you mind hanging around after Steve's speech? I know he would love to meet you. Okay. But it was just the act of showing up and then being curious and interacting with the person sitting next to me. And it was that small decision that I made that day that led to the hiring of Woz as the chief scientist at Fusion-io. And 6 months later, somehow, some way, Fusion-io was named by Businessweek as the most innovative company in America. Now, it wasn't David Bradford, it wasn't David Flynn, but having Wozniak, that was a difference maker.
That's awesome. And then sitting in the front row, right? I mean, it sounds simple.
Sounds simple, doesn't it?
It sounds so simple.
Yeah.
It's those little decisions that you've made that make a humongous impact. So
Yeah.
I think it's those little decisions that people make in business or at a networking event that really make that huge difference.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I wish your crowd the best, and just maintain your optimism, be excited about what you're doing, and find workarounds in those downtimes.
There's a lot of exciting things going on right now. And I think that, to your point about remaining curious and optimistic about technology and these cycles and knowing that things will turn around, whether you're a founder, an entrepreneur, whether you're just getting started in your career, the pressure is a privilege, and it compels us to be innovative, to be resilient, to be robust, and to be stronger, right? So,
By the way, that original quote, "Pressure is a privilege," is attributed to Billie Jean King, the famous tennis star from 50 years ago. And, other people have adopted it. And now it's my latest mantra:
I
pressure
love
is a
it.
privilege.
So, Michelle, do we want to take questions from?
Yeah, we can take questions. I think a lot of people are on LinkedIn, and with the lag, sometimes we don't get questions right away. But for those who are in Riverside, if you want to either pop in a question, maybe Eric, do they have the video or call capability to ask questions?
Yeah, so anyone in Riverside, if you want to ask a question, we can bring you up on stage here and make sure your video and microphone's enabled, and we can take questions. Or if you just want to drop a question in the chat, we can do that as well.
And I also just added the link to Riverside. So for those who don't know what I'm talking about, the link is in the comments. So there's a Riverside link, and you are welcome to join.
Riverside's our recording studio where we'll be recording and publishing this to Spotify in the next few days.
So there's a little bit of lag here. And if not, we can also keep asking questions. There's so much to learn from you. And I love the stories.
I'm happy to share more, but the thing that is kind of motivating me to write my latest book, My Life in 20 Minutes, is segmenting your life so you can stay absolutely focused on something, at least for a short period of time. Whether you got to go to the driving range for 20 minutes, I don't know how I did. I'm a kid. They grew up in Montana, Red Lodge, Montana, of all places. And our golf course there had sand putting greens. This is back in the 60s. This was crazy. And somehow, some way, I became the Utah State Senior Amateur Golfer of the Year back, I don't know, 2006, 2007, something like that. And I attribute it to these 20-minute practice sessions, whether it's you're working out or, reading a book or whatever it might be. If you'll just take these 20-minute segments in your life and be laser focused for those 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And it can be a power nap. I take these 20-minute power naps all the time. Drives my wife crazy. By the way, I need to give total credit to Dr. Linda Bradford. She's amazing, and got her PhD a little later in life and is using video gaming technology for something good. So that's adapting something that people aren't thinking about. But Dr. Linda said, wait a second, video gaming has a place. People get addicted to it. They're engaged, et cetera.
Mhm.
But let's use it for something good. And that's what the quick learn technology is all about.
That's awesome.
In that vein, Hunter has a question here in the chat. Have you seen the new Holo title developed by Disney? What are your thoughts of its applications for the metaverse?
Well, we think about the metaverse in two ways. One is, with the VR headsets. the Oculus, et cetera, and Microsoft. Many of them have these headsets, but they're expensive, they're clunky, they haven't figured out the secret sauce, and there's still only about 35 million headsets in the world. There are 4.5 billion smartphones, 4.5 billion smartphones. So if you want to get your message out, make it, friendly to the smartphone. I'll tell you, we have made our world, our metaverse, if you will, pretty darn sexy when you can go into your smartphone and have these interactions with Einstein or Da Vinci or whatever, just like you would play a game on your smartphone. And so, I think companies like Microsoft and Disney and Apple and Facebook, they're all real forward looking, but sometimes they're looking too far into the future. And right now, everybody uses a smartphone. So, there are some issues around that. Now, the big challenge of the metaverse is going to be interoperability. So think about it. So I build my platform in QuickLearn, but Eric, you may have a virtual meeting room over there where you have people appearing as characters in 3D worlds, et cetera, et cetera. Well, how are those people going to be interoperable? And so that's going to be kind of an ongoing challenge of the metaverse, and why I think it's kind of, uh, had a bit of a flutter before it really took off. And so I think when most people think of the metaverse, they think of these VR headsets and so forth and so on. But we think of it both on the smartphone as well as the headset, and the overall challenge of being able to navigate or teleport from David Bradford's virtual world to Eric's virtual world to the metaverse at Facebook and the Oculus. That's an interesting challenge.
David, we have a question from Russ Young, and he was asking you, when and how did you decide to start writing books?
Oh, Audrey Bailey. No one knows that name. No one will ever remember Audrey, except if they listen to this podcast. I was in the 7th grade. I'd moved from Billings, Montana to this little town called Red Lodge. And my English teacher in the 7th grade was Audrey Bailey. And she was a stickler for writing and, getting the words right and sentence structure and all of this stuff. And, it somehow in that 7th grade, in my mind, I said, I am going to show Audrey that I can write and really write well. And so it kind of always stuck in my mind. So that would have been circa 1965 or something like that. And then here I write the book in 50 years later, maybe. And almost 50 years later. So it kind of stuck in my mind. And so when people ask me, well, how did I get the idea for writing a book? I remember Audrey Bailey, my 7th grade English teacher.
Nate Terry has a question. What pressures are you currently facing, and how are you turning them into opportunities?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Well, listen, we're raising around for QuickLearn right now, so there's a pressure associated with that. I've funded it for the last few years, and we've built all of this robust technology. So now, it's time to take that technology, bring in a fresh team. We just hired a new CEO, a guy named Louis Manser, who's a Brit. A brilliant guy that worked at Apple and Sophos, one of the largest cybersecurity companies. So together with Louis and team, we're going to go out and raise the capital necessary to democratize education across the globe. So my wife and I have this desire to kind of make sure that kid walking the hills of Afghanistan, or that young lady walking through the jungles of Guatemala, that they have every bit of much brain power as I do, you do, etc. Why aren't they having access to education? And the way we can get them connected to the brightest minds in the history of the world, we can do it in the QuickLearn platform. And so I suppose raising that round and transitioning, to where I can have a little more time to spend with those grandkids. That's the pressure I'm feeling these
David,
days.
I love the energy. You know, maybe maybe my last question here is, what keeps you going? What keeps you going?
It's a great question.
Yeah, keeps me going. Maybe ask my wife that. I you know, I love to compete. I think that's one thing. I love to compete, whether it's a golf course, whether it's in business, whether it's whatever endeavor I'm in. I'd like to succeed, and I think that uh, was implanted in me early on. And so I know that in order to succeed at anything, there has to be a foundation laid. You've got to put in the hard work necessary. And so I don't mind the hard work, and, just look at it as an opportunity. And so I'm naturally more optimistic than most. And listen, let me just say, my heart goes out to those people that have mental health challenges. We've seen them in our family, etc. That is not easy to deal with. That is every bit as a disease as cancer or anything else. And so, while people may see me as being optimistic and having energy and these sorts of things, I have my down moments, absolutely have my down moments. And I've seen others that have way down moments. And so I just would encourage people to reach out and get help for their challenges, whether it be a tumor in cancer or whether it be a struggle with depression or anxiety or whatever they might be. So,
Yeah, that's real. That's real. Mental health is real, and there's a lot of folks that are suffering in varying degrees. And so I'm sure that your words are hopefully being received well here, because yeah, it's we need to be a little bit more kind and compassionate and empathetic about some of the challenges that a lot of the challenges that people out there, including ourselves, are facing.
Yeah.
So,
and I think mental health, I think it helps to have a community, whether it's
yeah.
family, if you don't have family, finding friends, if not friends, then a support group, where you
Michelle,
can
that's
relate.
really great advice. The problem is sometimes with mental health, what it happens is it causes people to kind of become really introspective and myopic and disconnected from the world. And, that's the danger, right, of these diseases, if you will. And it's finding, maybe someday I'll start a foundation that will allow people that have their world has become more narrow to expand and give them opportunities in a comfortable way to reconnect with people in society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even today, we can just do this even on a micro level, right? Whether it's checking in with ourselves, checking in with the people that are close to us, and just trying to see folks for what challenges they might be suffering or trying to endure right now. And
Yeah,
so a little bit of connectedness goes so far,
for sure.
So
Yeah.
I think that does it for the questions for now. David, thank you so much for your time. Michelle, is there anything you want to sort of add as we wrap this up?
I think just closing. I think. I mean, I know we asked a lot of questions, David. Maybe I'll close it out. I appreciate everyone who stayed on to ask questions and join us for the Leadership Podcast with David Bradford. And if those have not followed us on Executive Alliance, feel free to follow us on our LinkedIn page. And David, what's the best way for people to reach out to you if they have any additional questions?
Oh gosh, I do a lot with LinkedIn, and so come find me on LinkedIn. I think I have 32,000 followers or some ridiculous amount, but and listen, I respond, and people think, oh, that's just spam or whatever. No, I do that personally. It's a thing I spend an hour on every day, social. And then my email address is david.bradford at fluentworlds.com. That's all one word, fluentworlds.com. Email me any thoughts, questions.
All right.
We'll put that in the show notes in the Spotify episode that we published.
Super. Well, you two are great. And I just love the fact that you're out there, you're trying to make a difference, and just hope that the audience has the pleasure of meeting with you and interacting with you, but they've got to show up.
That's right. They have to show up. We all do. We all have to show up.
We do, and
Okay.
appreciate your time, David Bradford. It's been amazing.
Okay. You take care.
All right. Thanks, David.
Bye-bye now.
Okay. Bye, David.
Bye-bye.